Hello, welcome to How to Become a Grief Coach. In this brief presentation, I'm going to answer a few questions. The first one is, what's the history of grief education? You're going to recognize some of this, and some of this you won't, but I think most of it you will recognize, but you'll gain a greater understanding. Why do people get stuck? If we have this grief education, if we have these models, why do people still get stuck in their grief? Why are new understanding, new tools necessary? Why are those things necessary? And how to become a certified grief coach? So we're going to answer those questions as we go along. I'm Julie Clough. I'm a mom, a wife, a grandma, a certified grief coach and life coach, and the founder of Build a Life After Loss and the Hope Grief Coach certification. You can find more about me at julieclough.com. Why I'm here. I imagine that you're here because you have experienced some loss and grief in your life. And that's what brought you to this place where you wanted to help other people because you know what it feels like to lose people, things that are so important to you and go through that grief. This is my brother John, who died by suicide several years ago. And these are my two youngest children on either side of their oldest sister, who died in a car accident on Mother's Day in 2007. My daughter Carrie was 10 and my son David was 8 at the time of their passing. And that's what brings me here is I went through some devastating pain through these losses. Also went through a divorce from my first husband many years ago and some other really painful, difficult things in my life. And when you get to the other side of that, you just can't help but put a hand out and help those people that are experiencing those things as well. Let's talk about the effects of grief. The effects of grief are lowered confidence. It affects our concentration. It creates disconnection. It damages relationships. It impacts our happiness. It amplifies depression and anxiety. It increases fear. It destroys our sense of purpose. It interrupts sleep patterns and eating patterns, and it affects our health. These are some of the things that can be caused by grief. Maybe you can look at this list and check off the things that you experienced. I know I experienced every single item on this list. Maybe you did too. The current grief models, let's talk about the first one that is the most recognizable, the 5 stages of grief. This is Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's model that includes denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. This model was based on her work with people who were terminally ill. This was based on her interviews with people who had a terminal illness, who knew that they were going to be dying, and through these interviews, she recognized some patterns in their experience, denial of their illness, anger that they were experiencing this, bargaining, if I do this, if I do that, kind of bargaining with God, depression, that just obviously depressed state of knowing that this is inevitable, and then acceptance. So these were common emotions found in the grief of being terminally ill. She did such important work, and she did this at a time when many people who were terminally ill were kind of put in the back hallways at hospitals. They didn't, in her explanation, doctors didn't want to deal with the dying. They wanted to help the people that they felt like they could save. That was her explanation of what she noticed as a um, as a psychology professional in the hospitals. This model was then overlaid onto grief of someone passing, grief of every kind. This model was overlaid from the model that she created based on someone who was terminally ill. And the stages of grief, she didn't intend for it to imply this, but many people look at it this way. I've actually even had people say, uh, tell me that somebody has asked them, what stage of grief are you in? Or I've even heard somebody ask that question before. And really, it's not linear at all, is it? These emotions that we experience in grief, which are layered and many, you might experience, like we said before, depression, anxiety, fear. Those are also common emotions in grief, but those are all over the place. When someone's experiencing grief, the emotions are all over the place. So while the stages of grief may sound like they imply a linear pattern, they're actually never meant to be linear. It's more of a common experiences, and not everybody who experiences grief is going to experience all five of those stages that she identified. This model of grief, Dr. Lois Tonkin's model, is, I think you'll find it very familiar, even though you may have never heard of Dr. Lois Tonkins. But what this model implies is that when we have a grief experience, that grief remains and we build around it. This is another way of looking at that model is the person is overwhelmed by grief, notated here by this large broken heart over the figure of the person. But as we grow, as we have other experiences, the grief lessens, but we still carry the grief. This model implies that the grief never goes away, but it may change a little bit and we may carry it better. In this in this diagram, I'm just giving you just an overlay of what grief may look or feel like, just a visual representation. In the early stages of grief, what I call level 5, all-consuming grief, the early stages of grief, the early days of grief, it is so all-consuming. It is the only thing that is present in our life. It's hard to think about the next meal. It's hard to think about what we want to do with our day. It's hard to get up in the morning. It's hard to go to sleep at night. It is just ever present and so consuming. Level 4 grief is when that grief starts to dissipate a little bit, where we can actually start thinking about feeding ourselves, waking up in the morning. It's still very, very present, but it's not as all-consuming. Level 3 grief, and this is where a lot of people find themselves as they're going through the grieving process. Level 3 grief is functional grief. This is when the grief gets to the point where it's easier to carry, but it is really still present, and people are very aware of the grief of the person. The grief is right there, it's front and center, but it's not deep grief. It's not all consuming grief. It's functional grief. The person is able to show up for work. The person is able to get up in the morning. The person is able to take their kids to school or fix breakfast, but it's functional, but it's still very, very present. And hidden grief is, to me, the most insidious experience, because this is when people feel like they have to hide their grief in order to feel like they're okay. So the grief goes internal. It takes up that space inside. The grief is ever present for the person experiencing it, but the people around them are not as aware that they are still grieving. Hidden grief, functional grief, is the place where people often feel stuck. This is as good as it gets, is often what they feel. The current grief models are inadequate, they're inadequate because they don't offer a path. While intended and very helpful and has brought us to this place, they don't offer a path. They don't offer concrete steps forward. They don't promote hope for healing. And people can get stuck because they don't know what to do. They don't understand their grief and they don't know what to do about the pain that they're feeling. The blocks to healing include believing that healing isn't possible. If we don't believe healing is possible, people don't even attempt to heal because they don't think it's possible or even desirable. And which leads us to the next thing. Often the reason people don't think that it's desirable to heal is because they believe that their pain equates to love. And if they stop grieving, they stop being connected to that person that they lost. And that is just not the case. But that's a lot of what society tells us. Grief equals love. We grieve because we love. Yes, we grieve because we loved, but the pain of loss, we don't have to carry the pain of loss in order to continue to love the person that we lost. And trying and failing. People are trying, they're trying to get that old saying, pull themselves up by their bootstraps. They're trying, they're making an effort. They want to do better, they want to feel better, they want to show up in their life, they want to stay connected to the people who are still living that they want to stay connected to. And I just have to add that, I'm referring a lot to losing someone we love to death, but there are a myriad of grief experiences in this life, including abuse and a miscarriage and divorce or a separation from a partner. All these things can create feelings of grief. And when we try and we fail, when we try to do better and we fail, eventually what happens is people give up. So I want to suggest that there is another level, the level of resolved grief. And that's what I want to talk about today, because that's what I experienced in my own grief healing experience with losing my brother, losing my children, going through divorce, is I found peace and resolve in my grief. I want to introduce you to a few of our coaches. This is Laura. Laura says that her oldest son died unexpectedly in 2016, shortly before his 24th birthday. I withdrew. I numbed out on alcohol, food, and grief. I found life coaching in 2020 and decided to figure out how to live again. As I was searching for a way to help other mothers heal from child loss, I found Julie and began listening to her practical advice. And when she opened up her grief course, I knew I had to be a part of it. Thank you, Julie, for practical teaching and being an example of what is possible when you choose healing. This is what people want. They want to move away from the pain. They want to move away from the grief. They don't want to carry grief forever and ever and ever. They want to go to this place of healing. They don't know where healing lives. They don't know how to get there. The path is missing for them. And so they try, it's like we've mentioned before, you just have this feeling like, if you remember this feeling of I just want to be reconnected with life again. I just want to engage again. I want to rebuild my life. And so we make a plan, and the plan sounds something like, tomorrow morning is going to be different. Tomorrow I'm going to get up, I'm going to re-engage, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to do the things that make me happy. But we get up in the morning and it doesn't turn out the way that we hoped it would. And so we go back into this grief space. We go back into coping over and over and over again. And we make a new plan and we say, My life is going to be different starting next week, starting on my birthday, starting on New Year's, whatever the date is that we decide our life is going to be different. We're going to rebuild, but then something happens and we find ourselves stuck in grief again. Perhaps you had this experience too. I know I did during my grief experiences. They want to go over to healing, but there's no path forward, and the person is left with no way to get from where they are to where they want to be. This lack of direction and understanding causes people to feel stuck in their grief. What the person needs and desires is hope, hope that they can heal, hope that there is a life past grief and a path forward. Where is that path? Remember the arrows going in a million different directions, trying to find the path, trying to find answers? They're looking, they're searching, but they can't find it. That's where the hope model of healing comes in. Hope model of healing is all about honoring our grief, opening to understanding, preparing through discovery, and embracing resolution and rebuilding. I'm going to show you what this model looks like. That's the overview. The hope model of healing offers a pathway to healing and leads to transformation. And this is what it looks like. This is the hope model of healing, including the 5 foundations of growth. You'll notice, recognize some of these words: coping, understanding, discovering, resolving, and rebuilding. And that's how we go from coping in our grief to rebuilding a life that we want to live. The hope model of healing offers structure, and the 5 foundations of growth provide a pathway. The hope model of healing and the 5 foundations of growth create more certainty in healing. Perhaps you've heard of post-traumatic growth. This is something that some people experience after really challenging loss or other challenges. So post-traumatic growth is often, when I've read about it, when I've learned about it, it's a fairly new concept. It's a fairly new idea. But they noticed that some people were experiencing post-traumatic growth. And so they went in to kind of see what is post-traumatic growth and why do some people have post-traumatic growth and others don't. But there's a segment of the population that does experience post-traumatic growth. That's definitely been my experience. But as I read the information on this new idea, I sensed this feeling of it being random, and some people experience it, some people don't. Why do some people experience it, other people don't? And it was kind of left to chance. And what I've noticed as I have worked with dozens of people through this model of healing and through the 5 foundations of growth is that this pathway creates more certainty in healing. It creates more certainty in post-traumatic growth, because that's why we call it the 5 foundations of growth. That the growth is the part that helps us to move forward, but it also needs to be simple. It needs to be simple and doable and not overwhelming, because someone who's in grief can be easily overwhelmed. So all those things are factored in to this process. This is another one of our certified grief coaches. Pam said, Julie Clough is a thought leader when it comes to the healing process for people in grief. She has developed a clear path for people to claim freedom from a lifelong attachment to loss. Her unique coaching program has equipped me to confidently support people through pain into the fullness of hope and purpose. Julie is very good at using visual cues to explain the why for each precept of her hope model of healing. So how can you help? Think about the challenges that you've faced. I shared just a couple of the challenges that I faced with you tonight that brought me here to doing this work. Think about the challenges that you've faced. Think about the lessons that you have learned. Jot some of those things down. And why are you here today? You're here today because you have a desire to help. As you combine your personal wisdom, knowledge, and experience from your own challenges with new tools and understanding, you become a powerful advocate and guide for those experiencing loss and grief. You become a powerful advocate and guide. When you combine your wisdom from your own challenges with some powerful new tools and understanding, you can become that guide. So, becoming a certified grief coach, the goal of the certification is for you to become comfortable, confident, and effective. Those are three very important, powerful words. The goal is for you to become comfortable, confident, and effective in supporting a client in their grief and assisting them in life-changing, incremental healing steps and shifts. You bring the desire, the compassion, and the willingness, and will provide the training, the structure, and the tools. This is Julie Hawks. Julie says, going through the grief training was a profound experience for me. I learned so many things that were brand new to me and that helped me understand grief on a much deeper level. I love that now I have tools to empower my clients to make step-by-step progress and find joy again. As a coach, Julie is intuitive, gentle, and kind. She is so knowledgeable and answered our questions with wisdom and grace. I trust her implicitly. If you are considering taking this training, don't hesitate. So many people need what she offers, and she teaches it in a way that feels doable for anyone. I will forever be grateful for the things I have learned from this program, and I can't wait to share it with others so they can grow and heal too. We have so many helping professionals come through this program, people who are in the mental health field, people who are grief support leaders, people who are in working in churches as clergy or support systems within churches. Many different people come into this program so that they can be trained in grief and how to help other people through grief. So what do you get in this training? I mentioned confidence to be effective, to help others, including knowledge of what to say and do and what not to say and do, which is very important. And most importantly, why we say and do certain things and why we don't say and do certain things. Confidence to build or expand your business with new valuable skills, specific coaching skills in grief, as well as in rebuilding relationships, confidence, and purpose, because those are hit really hard in grief. Relationships, confidence, and purpose are hit really hard in grief. And so you'll receive not only specific coaching skills in grief, but also in helping people rebuild relationships, coaching them through rebuilding their relationships, confidence, and purpose. Ability to be an effective grief coach or grief support leader, access to a program that works, and personal healing and increased capacity. Because when you do your own healing, when you do your own work, you increase your capacity to show up in your own life. How it works. You'll receive comprehensive training in the Hope Model of Healing and the 5 Foundations of Growth, 9 modules of video training with lifetime access to the video classroom, 9 weekly online hour to hour and a half interactive Q&A calls, question and answer calls, training in the specific coaching skills and tools in grief, training in the 3 levels of coaching, which we didn't even talk about here, but this is training in 3 different levels of coaching that are really important if you're going to be an effective coach. Instruction on how to use the program in your business, all materials, including the 120 plus page Build a Life After Loss client workbook, and the right to use these learned skills, tools, and materials in your practice as outlined in the program. You'll have the ability to use this program in the way that feels correct for you. And as it says at the bottom, there is a registration special. And when you register, you can save $700. Okay, this is Sandy. Sandy is another one of our grief coach certified coaches. She's also one of our trainers. She is very knowledgeable and very skilled. Sandy said, Julie had been my grief coach for many months. The experience changed my life. When I heard about her grief coach training, it was a no-brainer. I think what excited me most is that I didn't need anything except a passion for helping people. Julie did the rest. She had all the tools, systems, workbooks, and materials. It was nice to go through a group program with other people. We had great discussions and working through each chapter together. I couldn't believe how much value Julie gave us at each training. I'm really excited that I can help other people in their grief journey. My confidence has grown and my skills and knowledge. So now I get to guide and coach people through the system Julie built, the same one that changed my life. I love this that Sandy went through the program as a client and then she became a coach and now she's a trainer in the program. She is a walking model of how this program works and why it is so effective. And you'll get to meet Sandy as you go through this program. Let's talk about the investment because similar programs can be upwards of $10,000, sometimes much greater than that. And this program, the regular tuition is $3,900. That is the regular investment. But right now we do have a special, early bird special. It's only $3,200. You are saving $700. And there are payment plans available. We have a couple of different payment plans available. And when you meet with our enrollment specialist, who I just introduced you to, Sandy, you will have an opportunity to talk to her about those payment plans. So to get started, you can make a difference. The next training begins soon. So go to bit.ly/Get Hope Certified. It's all one word. It's all lowercase. Go to that website. You can schedule a time, a 15-minute call with Sandy to learn more about the program. Save $700 when you call today and get started. And we are so excited to have you here and to share this program with you. Thanks for being here.